management tool today, and we're going to focus on the security area today. I will walk through the areas that we will cover in a minute, and then you are of course welcome to ask questions all along the way. So the agenda for today is that we're going to introduce the participants. I can see that Rafaela has arrived. That's great. So that we can get introduced to each other, and as well as stated here, specifically on regards to knowledge on security in AX 2012. Then I'm going to introduce DSM, the material, as well as the DSI material. The audit part, we tend to refer to that as DSI. The guide, the white papers, value add, methodology, so the process and so forth. We're going to walk through that so that you are familiar with how we typically run a project in this regard. Then we will walk through the DSM as a whole on regards to security, and it's not a monologue, so you can ask questions and come up with areas that you want to specify even deeper than I had here. Then we're going to have a short break. It's only a 4-hour session, but I think a short break is sometimes needed. And then after the break, we are going to have some hands-on where you will be able to start a recording, do a matching, and then create a new security role in different ways, using different approaches. Any questions or comments to this? No? So.
No, for me it's okay.
Perfect. So could we start with a round of introduction then? Could you start, let me see here, maybe Rafaela? Show all controls, let me see. Or Elena, can you start? I can see that your mic is active. Anyone from Reply It? Can't hear you. Can anyone hear me?
I guess that Elena has some problem to the microphone.
Okay.
But can I start maybe?
Yeah, you can start.
I am a technical consultant at Reply, so my security experience is more programmatical, in the sense that I program the permission and the privilege for a menu item. I don't really know the functional part of security.
Okay.
So I'm here as a technician to learn also the functional part of security, let's say.
That's perfect. It's a hybrid area, the security. So it's great that we have
Yes.
you as well here as a technical representative. I'm going to come into some of the technical areas as well in the session.
Yes, I have to understand how to install all these framework, let's say. So
exactly, and we have an installation guide to support you in that as well. I can show you that as well today when we walk through the guides and the material. Great, thanks for sharing that. Rafaela or Elena? Can't hear you if you're talking, Elena.
Hi.
Hi, I can hear you now. Great.
I'm Elena. I'm a functional consultant on reply, and I follow the management of a permission in different process. I know the permission in AX.
Yeah.
And I implementation this permission in different projects.
Yeah. So you're familiar with the security from the front end perspective?
Yes, yes. Front end, and I edit the permission directly in EOT.
Okay, great. Have you used the security
for the modification? Maybe.
Maybe we'll come to we'll come back to that later today. So when you see it, you might be you might have seen it before. So let's get back to that. So you have you've worked with security in AX 2012 from the front end and as well as technically perspective. That's great. What about prior to AX 2012? Have you worked with security there? On AX 2009, for instance? I can't hear you again. Oh no, it's really troubling. Sago left and Rafaela is stating that the mic doesn't work. Okay. Now Elena left as well. Let's just give them a minute or two to get back into the meeting.
Hi. Hi.
I think I can hear you now, Lena.
Hi.
Hi. Great.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I hear you fine now.
Sorry, this is a problem with connection.
That's fine. What about Zach?
One moment, please.
Zago's coming in as well now.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. So just to introduce myself as well.
Okay.
That's great. Perfect. Thank you. My name is Stefan, and I have been working with numerous different ERP systems, counting SAP, NAV, AS400, and the past 12 years I've been working with AX. I work as an architect on several larger projects, and I'm also the architect behind this tool, this module that you see here. So I'm quite familiar with AX, so both from a technical as well as a functional perspective. So any questions along the way, please don't hesitate to ask them. The DSM module itself started because we had some issues in regards to setting up security and roles and rights in AX. We basically could not set up what the customer wanted without spending many hours of consultancy work on it. So that's why the tool itself started. We wanted to optimize the way that we work with the tool, or sorry, with security. And what you're going to be introduced to now is some of the documents that we have prepared and written for the tool, as well as best practice, installation, white papers, and so forth. So I'm just going to minimize my PowerPoint here. The first thing I'm going to show you are the documents, or the first things are the documents here. And we have everything fully described as a part of the documentation here. We have split it up into two, so you can see here that we have a guide concerning IT audit, and then we have a guide here concerning the security area. The reason for doing this is that you actually have two separate licenses. It's one model, technically it's one model that you install, but it contains two different licenses. And the reason for this is that some companies, not a lot, but some companies only want either or and not the complete package. And then we can actually supply that to them. Furthermore, it tends to be different persons in the company, at least in large organizations, that take care of the audit part in connection to the security. So the person that takes care of the audit is not necessarily the same person as the one that takes care of building the security roles. Just to show you how it is, we have created an overview here of every single piece of functionality within the software. And it's been stated here in this table of contents here, and you can simply drill directly into it, and then you can see an overview of the form here, one of the forms. This is the main form. And in some cases, as we have in this case here, we've even created YouTube videos which you can click on and then get some information on how to use this, when to use this, and why to use this functionality. That's something we're going to extend in the future. Furthermore, this guide also looks on how in standard AX, how to use DSM in a number of different ways, but also tips and tricks in regards to license. So in this case, we can click on the how to grant view access to Management Reporter. Management Reporter is the piece of software which you can construct reports fairly easily within. And this piece of software actually requires you to be an enterprise license to even view. You can see it here, which standard roles grant access to the report manager. But we found out that if you open and create a statement, you don't put anything in it, you don't put any menu items or anything else, it's just a blank empty privilege, and then you put this onto a user, then you can actually grant access to a viewing right in the Management Reporter. So it's also tips and tricks like this which you can benefit from, which have been documented in the tool here. Otherwise, it's step-by-step guides in the tips and tricks here on how to utilize the different functionality in examples here. On the audit part, we have taken this in as a kind of description on how security is defined within the company. So the company can also use these descriptions within this document to actually state to the auditor how they are working with security and what they document and how everything is interlinked. So if we jump to this page here, you can actually see that we have stated how are the different AX users linked to the Active Directory users and Active Directory groups? How are the different security rights inherited or specifically stated, and so forth? Everything is documented here with examples and also with field descriptions and functionality descriptions as well. So we've really tried, and we've really put a lot of effort into this documentation to help you. We're going to come back to these a number of times during the demo, just so that you can get a further insight into how and where to find the information that you need. So if we just open the my overview here, we have a number of different documents available to us. And as stated, we also have documents that have the installation described. This has been done together with, so I'm just going to show you some of the documents that you will be able to also to brand in your own, with your own logo. So let's see here in installation. So in this case, we have an installation document that goes through the prerequisites of installation. You can brand this with your own logo, and it simply states how to install, what do you need to do, what is found within the model, and state which layer it's in and what you need to do step by step, again here, by putting elements on the menu and everything like that. Is that what you would they cover the needs?
Yes.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, yes, I think so. And this documentation, where is available?
Yeah.
In the website, where can I find it? Okay.
So so you have it, and then we can rebrand it to yeah, to your logo, so that you can have it as part of your own documentation.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. The other, another very important element when talking about this are pre-sale documents. And pre-sale documents are available in a number of different ways here. We have white papers where we have described the functionality of DSM, DSI, as you can see here, kind of in a simple manner as white papers need to be stated. And again, this is something that can be rebranded if you wish. And in addition to white papers, we have both white papers, by the way, for the biggest competitors. To align yourself with, for instance, FastPath, which is primarily an audit tool, then we have actually created documents that state what do FastPath do and what do DSM or DSI make the sales process easier. These are also documents that can be made available to you if you want them. I can send everything to you afterwards. The last thing that I'm going to show you here on regards to the documentation is a very important piece of documentation. This is just written in here in Visio. If you have rapid value, we can make that available to you as well as a rapid value flow. But what this actually shows and what this is intended to do is to clarify how do the customers actually develop security and how do they progress with the roles upwards into their, for instance, test AX, pre-live AX, and so forth into the live. So this is a simplified version of this that covers or gives an introduction to the full spectrum of work. So what we have on the left-hand side in the swim lanes here are the different roles. And we state, is it an internal role or is it an external role? In this case, we have prepared it with another partner. And what we simply do with this is to clarify in the organization who is in charge and who's responsible of what. So in this case, we've stated that there's a project manager that states where do we begin to specify and create security. So for instance, if the major pain is on the inventory, both license-wise and functionality-wise, we will start developing a security role in that area. So we choose which area we're going to develop a security role within, and then we choose a person or a number of persons or a full department that is going to carry out a recording. And I'm going to come back to what a recording is, but a recording is simply a list of menu items that that you need access to within AX to carry out your day's work. So when we have chosen a person or a number of persons to do this recording, they carry out their work and we do the recording. This is saved as an XML file, which we then, as the customer security representative, the one that builds the roles, this can also be a consultant, that is a consultant in a lot of different examples. This is just an example where the customer takes over a lot of the different steps. We cover every single aspect in this sense. So we have examples or customers where we install the model and then we give them 2 days of training. You do that. And then afterwards, we basically don't hear from them again, or very, very limited communication. So they fully take responsibility for setting security rights and roles. And then we have the other end of the scale, or the spectrum, where we install the model and then we simply state and create every single security role that they need. And we even manage their users by the DSM tool as well. So the normal process is somewhere in between, where they create some of the security roles and then you create some of the security roles as well, with varying percentage division there. So what we're going to do when we have the security process, or the process created here as a security recording, is that we're going to load this into the DSM main form, and then we're going to match it to existing privileges, duties, and roles in AX to figure out which of these objects grant access to the menu items that we wish. Afterwards, we are going to create a role based on, for instance, chosen privileges, as stated in this case here. There are a number of different ways to construct a security role, which we're going to come into within the session. When we have constructed the security role, we're going to test it. And whether or not we find it okay, there's a different path. If we don't find it okay, we create a new iteration of the role, and we keep doing that until we test it okay. And in this case, there's a second iteration of testing, overall testing. And again, until the full scope has been tested okay, we keep on creating new iterations of the security role. As soon as it has been tested okay, the TSA in the project, Technical Solution Architect, will move the role to live, or the next environment, so to speak. In this case, we simply state live. When it has been moved to live, in this case, project manager is going to choose some persons to test the new role in live. And we actually mean this, test it in live, because we have some functionality within DSM that enables you to move users from one role to another. This actually makes it possible to do a process called soft live. And this means that you actually have 2 separate roles on the same area in live at a time. So let's state that we create an accountant role, or even an inventory clerk role. We create that, and then we, version 1, we assign 50 persons to this, and then we figure out that we need to create some modifications within this inventory clerk role. So we create inventory clerk version 2. By doing this, we don't modify the existing role. We simply create a new iteration of it as a standalone security role. And there are a number of reasons to support this process, to doing it in this way. The number one reason is that audit-wise, it's very, very clear when you go from one iteration of the role to another. So we're simply going to document when you have been added to the version 1 of the security role, when we revoked the access to the version 1 of this security role, and when we assigned you to version 2. Thus, it's very easy to see the involvement in the security settings within the AX installations here. So what we have created is a tool where you can easily click on the role, click Move Users. I'm going to show you this in a minute, just to show you how easy it is. Move Users, select a couple of users, move them to the new iteration of the role. They test the role, so instead of moving 50 users from version 1 of the role to version 2 straight away, we might assign 2 or 3 users to version 2. And when they have stated that it's okay, we assign the rest. So if we experience any issues on the new version of the role, we are only going to affect 2 or 3 persons within the organization instead of 50. So this is a way of ensuring stability and making sure that we have the best chances of success. Any questions or comments to this before I show you another part?
No.
Perfect. The Move Users role that I talked about is found in here. So I just opened the test environment here in AX, and you can open the Assign Users to Role. This is a standard form of AX within AX, and then you can select a security role. And as soon as you do this, the button Move Users is opened. And in here, we automatically deselect the role that you have selected, by the way. In here, you can select which role you want to move users to, as stated in the text here. And here you should imagine that you have assigned maybe 50 different users to the accountant version 1 role here. And then you can simply click the number of users you want to move from the accountant to the accountant version 2. And you can also state that you want to move the exact same access to legal entities as the persons you have selected here had on the accountant role. So when we move them to accountant version 2, they still only have access to the legal entities that you have assigned prior to this. And then you press OK, and then you don't have to do anything else. And when they have tested, you do the same, but then you simply select every user assigned to the now old version of the role and move everyone to the new. This makes transitioning much easier and much safer. Can you see the idea? Can you follow the thoughts here on regards to going live?
Yes.
Perfect. Great. So let's just jump a bit out again. So this is the process, the scope of the security process here. And in a number of different customers, we actually create multiple processes. So we create a process for what do we do in dev, in the development environment? How do we move the security role from dev to UAT? How do we move it from UAT to pre-live, and what do we do in the different environments, and what do we do when we get into live? So you might have 3 or 4 different sub-processes in this case here. And the reason for doing this, as I stated, there are multiple reasons for doing this. First of all, you make it very clear in the organization who is in charge of what. And as we move the task to the persons who are actually going to be affected by the security role, we make it much clearer to them that they have a task in the creation of the security role. So if they don't cover the full process that they want to have access to in the recording, they're not going to have access to it. So but in this case, they can't just point the finger at the security representative or the security consultant and state, you did not grant access to what I said I wanted, because they have basically they've just had to go through the process that they want to have access to, and then you can grant it afterwards. So it's much easier to explain the organization what steps are we going to go through when designing security. Secondly to this is very good in the IT audit. So when the auditors come and they state, how do you do security? Then your customers can simply show them this document and state, this is our process. We do it in this and this and this way. And then what we have seen is that the auditors tend to ask fewer questions. They tend to rely on them having this under control. So there are multiple good things by doing this. Let me just for a minute jump back to the recording here. Oh no, sorry, not the record, but the case. Oh, that was the rebranded. Sorry, super user training here. So we have now gone through the introduction within the demo as well. So now we're going to have a demo, so you have a recap of the different functionality, where I'm going to go more into depth with the functionality than I did in the prior sessions that we have had. So let's go into AX again. So as stated, what we're going to focus on today are the functionalities found on regards to creating security roles. So the first thing we're going to look upon is a functionality where you can actually merge existing roles into a more easy to work with security hierarchy. So we simply open the security roles form here, the standard form that shows you all of the different roles that you have in your AX, the ones that are standard, the ones you've developed, and so forth. In this case, we can just look up on the first one, the accountant here, and you can see that there are a number of different duties, and these duties are constructed of a number of different privileges. I have this So what we're going to look upon here are the areas covered by the authorization here. On top we have the users. They typically derive from the Active Directory. And the Active Directory users are then imported into AX or created upon the first time the user accesses AX automatically. That depends on how they work with the users. I'm going to come back to this during the demo as well. The security hierarchy consists of the security role in top. The security role, as we saw on the accountant, is constructed by duties and privileges, directly found on the security, also as stated here in the diagram. The duties themselves are also constructed or created on the grounds of privileges, so it's just a collection of privileges. And the privileges themselves are the ones, as you know, that grant access to the different securable objects. And what we're going to focus on today are user interface elements and tables and fields. So user interface elements are also the ones that carry the information on regards to license. And actually every single menu item carries two sets of information on regards to license: viewing license and maintain license. So depending on which access level you grant on the specific menu items on your entry point, that can end up costing another license. So it might cost a functional license to have viewing access, but an enterprise license to have full control to the menu item. And that is kind of very difficult to see in standard AX. So we have put a lot of effort into this, which you're going to see. Another point is that we have created a recording, again, another kind of recording where you can record tables and fields so that you can record which tables and fields you want to work with, either audit-wise or in constructing a security. I'm going to show you that again. This is the process we went through, part of it. Just to show and underline the business case, again, you can see here that it's much more expensive to be an enterprise CAL than a task user CAL. It's actually a factor 10. So I'm going to show you a way to break down the structure within the DSM tool so that you can easily see why is a specific security role expensive. I have a good example from one of our partners where a consultant added functionality that actually had a role, a retail store manager role, going from being a task user to being an enterprise. And that had a fair amount of excess cost to that added a fair amount of excess cost to the customer, if not corrected again. This is just a number of the users, or sorry, the companies that have purchased the last time, the last period of months. So what do you gain by doing this? You get better management of your security setup, meaning that you can have a more granular approach to setting security, where you can actually create security roles that cover the different organizational areas. So you can basically set the bar higher when doing security. You don't need to simply assign a full security role to add access to a specific button, for instance, which is something we see a lot on our different partners because it's hard to know what else to do. So you get better management of license as well because, again, as we tend to use the more granular approach to security when we create the security roles, you only have access to the menu items that you need. So this means that we can actually state that you do pay the price for the AX. That is right, because you only have access to the menu items that's needed. Furthermore, it's more easy to manage the users on regards to assigning the different rights to the users within a daily basis because of the tools that we provide. Lastly but not least, as we document anything, you will be able to, after you started logging, to actually go down into any field, any button, meaning not any button, but any menu item, any type of menu item, and see who had access to this at any point in time after you started logging and what access they had, and even what access they had within any legal entity. So if the auditor asks the question to the customers on who has access to their bank accounts, for instance, then you simply create a recording, open the form, click on the button or log which table or field they want to know this about, and then you ask that within a report that we have that you're going to see, but that's going to be on next Friday. So again, any button that has a menu item behind it, any form, any report with a menu item, any field, any table, you can actually see at any point in time after you started logging who had which access. That's really good on regards to audit. Great. So let's jump back. We are now in the security roles, and we imagine that we want to create a very large role. This is not based on a recording. This is simply based on adding a bulk amount of roles to a new role. In this case, I've created a role that's called DSM Reduced System Administrator. And this Reduced System Administrator is kind of, it's actually very popular because it enables the companies to assign broad access to AX to a supportive role within the company, to a supportive person, without having to assign, let's say, 100 different security roles, or even the security administrator, or not the system administrator, which obviously is not wishful because it grants access to the AOT and everything else. And you can't delimit access for a sysadmin. That is by default everything. So what you simply do is you create a new role here, then you push the button merge roles, and as stated, I have already done this on this role, which you can see here, because this role contains only one privilege, but this one privilege contains the same access as every one of these roles that we have selected here combined. So all of these roles are now, it's 105 roles that we have combined into one new privilege. So you could have done this by creating, as Microsoft has done here, by creating a master role, so to speak, and then adding sub-roles. But there are multiple disadvantages of doing it this way. First of all, we've seen a rather noticeably poorer performance in AX when you construct a role that has more than 5 or 6 sub-roles into it. So when you assign this, the users are simply going to notice poorer performance with an AX when they use it. Secondly, it's very difficult to modify the access because the same menu item will be present multiple times, but with varying security rights, with that varying access level. In this case, everything is found on the same role, on the same privilege, thus it's extremely easy to modify. I'm going to show you that in a minute. When you have selected all of the roles that you saw here, as you might noticed, I did not select the security administrator, the system administrator, or the security development tool role. They have not been merged into this privilege here. So when you have selected the roles within this merge here, you go to the form here called the run here called run merging of roles. And in here you can state which roles do you want to merge at this point in time. You can simply leave it blank and then we merge everything. We tend to say that it's better to state which roles you're going to merge on as of right now. And then we have one parameter here called set to maximum access level. And this is actually used when creating the reduced administrator. Because what we do is we use the list of menu items, tables, and service operations, and so forth that the roles that we have chosen within the security roles have. But then we simply state that the reduced system administrator is to have the highest possible access to all of the menu items that the chosen roles have access to. And as soon as we press OK here, we are going to iterate through the full scope of everything that these roles have access to and create the new privilege as shown before. This is also used if you have a customer that has a working security setup in some areas. Then you can go into the security roles again. You can create a new role, and in the merge roles, you simply state or you simply select one role to merge. And then you get everything found, for instance, under the accountant, as you can see here. Every duty and privilege here is going to be merged into one new privilege. Thus, again, it makes it much more easy to modify it afterwards. So if you want to modify this afterwards, so let's imagine that now we have created this role, as you saw before, by this batch run here. You can set it to be enabled to run on the batch server. That can be preferable on performance. Then you open the security entry point permissions. This is also called security development tool. This is actually Microsoft's beta tool that we have taken into the to the package as well. We have modified it and optimized it in a number of different areas. And in here, we simply state we want to look upon the role DSM reduced administrator. And as soon as we choose it, it's going to load all of the permissions. This is Microsoft functionality, and show us what we have access to on regards to the main menu. But since everything is found in one privilege, it's actually very easy now to use the main menu as a starting point to delimit access to certain areas. So let's imagine that we want to delimit access to viewing rights, for instance, within the GL setup. So you can't modify any GL setup. You can see everything, but you can't modify it. Then we simply expand the GL menu here. We navigate to the setup as soon as it's done loading the permissions here. And then we right-click and choose a subtask within the right-click menu. That's called Expand All Children. And then we actually expand the full scope of the setup submenu within the GL area of AX. Hope that it's done in a minute. Have you seen this tool before?
No, I only see the standard AX security management. And I have a question.
Yeah.
The privilege in which we put all the role is not a standard AX privilege, is a privilege, an object typical of your framework.
Yeah, it's going to be if you create a new privilege from the AOT. It's simply a new privilege that we create and assign different security rights to.
Okay, but it's the periodic which go to assign to this privilege all the.
So you mean if we're going to put it into a batch, for instance?
Yes, yes.
No, we're not going to do that. We actually have the capability to do it, but we strongly advise against it because we modify the AOT in that sense. So that's something you go and enable when you need it. So we don't just modify the AOT whenever the batch one is carried out. So the reason for enabling the batch here is that if you merge 105 roles, as you saw before, that's going to take some time. So instead of having to open a new session of AX, you can simply put the load onto the batch server and have that batch server carry out the merging, and then you can keep on working in your own session of AX. That's why we created it in that way.
Okay. And the performance of this new privilege are better than using a sub-role because we are no more using a sub-role but just one privilege.
Yeah, it's better because the menu items are only present once. So instead of having access to the same menu item with varying access level on multiple different roles, the AX only has to iterate through the menu item once, and then that is the access level that the user has. So that's why it's performing better. So if you simply assign every single role, or 105 roles, as in this case, to a user, you will have a factor of 3 or 4 number of menu items assigned to the user as compared to this specific privilege, because they're present multiple times.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions before we continue?
No.
Right. So we open the GL here, the general ledger, and then we right-click on the setup here and choose Expand All Children. So right now it has expanded every single submenu that is available here. And what we can do now to delimit access to this, you can see by the icon here that we have full control to everything. And if I select a specific menu here, it actually navigates to the same menu item here in the grid view. In this case, we're simply going to choose set entry point permissions for current node and expanded subtree items. And this means that we're going to work with all of the menu items found within the setup area here within the general ledger. In this case, we can simply block mark every single menu item, state either no access or view, as in this case, and choose apply. And then we click next, and then it's going to take a bit of time again. We have to get used to that when working with security. There is a bit of waiting along the way, but it's going to populate the role tree. And the role tree in this case is extremely simple because we don't have the 9,500 privileges as of standard. We only have one. And this privilege, as stated, grants access to every single menu item within AX as we have wished. So the only thing that we need to do right now to block edit rights within a full submenu is to click apply. And then we're done. I'm not going to do it now because then we have to wait 5 minutes to do it. You can actually also create a new menu, a new privilege in here from the front end. And when doing it this way, we advise you to do it actually because, if you remove access to the, if you modify the access on the merged privilege, then we advise you to create a new privilege aside to this where you actually assign the new access that you have. Because when we do another merge, we see which privileges that are on this role, and if the menu item is found in the new privilege that we have created here with viewing rights, we're not going to add it to the DSM reduced administrator privilege again with full rights. Then we simply leave it out. So we have incorporated a way of working together with the merging batch run here. Well, not batch run, but service run. Did that make sense? It was a bit cryptic explanation, I know, but I can come with another example if it did make sense. I guess so. Perfect. So let me just close this again here. Then it warns me that there are some of the menu items that we have in here that we haven't updated to the selected permission. Do you want to close? Yes. Another way to modify is actually to carry out a recording. So let's start a recording here. As soon as we start the recording, you will see that the icon changes to a stop icon. And then we open AX, and then we open, for instance, the online users. And we can iterate through another, some other forms as well. So if we go back now, and we stop the recording, then we get a list of menu items that we have accessed. And again, you can use this specific list of menu items to modify the access on this specific role. So imagine that you now iterate through a number of different areas of AX that you don't want this role to have access to. Then you simply click on the different menu items and buttons and so forth, and then you right-click and choose Set Entry Point Permissions, and then again, choose No Access, Apply, and Next, and then it's the exact same process as before, where you right-click the privilege and choose Apply. So this is very operational, and it actually resembles a bit of the way that you did security prior to AX 2012, because you can do it either from the main menu or very simply through a recording, because everything is found on this privilege. And as you can see, this privilege is only found on this specific security role, so you don't disrupt the access for other roles by modifying this specific privilege. So many advantages of doing it in this way. So let's now imagine that we have created this reduced administrator and we are now done modifying it. Do you want to save? No. Then we want to export this to the test environment. And again, we don't actually have to open the OT to do this. You can open the Dynamic Security Management main form. It's going to load the entry points as soon as we click it. When it's done doing that, we can navigate to the roles area where we have the DSM roles present. Well, you have every single role present, but in this case, we want to export the DSM reduced system administrator. And to move a security role as it's found in the AOT, you need to create an AOT project. And in here, you simply do that. Give it a name, and then you have two options. Either include every single bit from the role. So if it's a standard role that you have modified or ISV role, then we take every single layer in and put that into the project. If you use this one here, include all sub-elements from specified layer and above, then we go to the parameters of DSM and we see which layer has been specified as the one that we develop security in, customized security elements. In this case, it's the cost layer. So if we select the include all sub-elements from specified layer and above, that means that we will take the CUP, user, and USP layer into account. So any objects, any privileges, duties, or menu items found in that layer is going to be part of the project. So as soon as we press OK, we do a full analysis of the form, and in this case, it's fairly simple. Everything is found in the USR layer, the user layer, and it consists of one role and one privilege. So the only thing that's left to do for the customer or for the security consultant is to take a screenshot of this and send it to the TSA and state, I want to move this role. So by doing it in this way, we ensure that we have every single modification in the project, the AOT project. We don't forget to put any modified objects in because we have a full analysis every time we create a new project. We also have some customers that choose export and then send the project to the TSA. That depends on the process that you agree with your customers on. It's up to you on how to do that. Typically, they just send a screenshot and then leave it to the TSA to move it. Can you see the use of this, Zago, on regards to easing the task of moving rights?
So the result of the exportation is a standard XPO?
Yes.
Or okay.
This is a standard AOT project that we have created here. We just show it in the UI area because we don't want the users to access the AOT. So we can actually go and press Control-D, and then we can open the projects here, and then you can find it as a fully standard project here. So you can only choose one role at a time, by the way, to simplify things. So you can't select multiple roles or all roles and then create one project. We actually had that functionality in the beginning, but we saw that created a number of different errors that, well, weren't good, or scenarios that weren't good on regards to putting things into live. Wished for. Another way to use this reduced administrator is to open the add table permissions to role or privilege. So what this means is that we are actually going to override the table access on a role or a given privilege as stated here. And then you can go to the select area here and state which tables do you want to have. For instance, as stated here, every single table of AX. And then you can choose the override access level. This means that if the role already has access to the table in play here, we are going to override that with read or view. And that means that when you have created the reduced administrator, as we had here, you can duplicate that role. You can do that from the DSM main form, by the way, just to show that in a minute. Simply select the role that you want to duplicate, any role, and as soon as you click on any role, you can duplicate it. And then we state what is it called right now, and then you can simply state read only, for instance, and then press OK. The AOT name consists of a prefix plus underscore here, and if we base it on an existing role, we take the AOT name of the existing role and put in here as well as a kind of audit trail. And then if we base multiple roles, new roles, on the same role, we are, sorry, it was a long night. I had a sick kid. Sorry about that. Then we
Never
post,
mind.
Oh, thanks. Then we postfix the role as well. So meaning we set 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we ensure that we have a unique AOT name. So if we had done that and we then open this here, we choose the role and we press OK. And what this enables us to do is to actually create a somewhat simple role that only grants viewing rights to basically the full scope of AX. So if you have an auditor or a controller or C-level persons that don't need to modify AX, or well, explicitly should not modify AX data, then you can create a role for them in this sense that enables them to access any form, which is found within the reduced administrator in this case, but only with viewing rights. And again, everything here is automized. You simply state which role you want to do this on privilege and click OK. And as this can take some minutes, you have the possibility of putting this onto the batch server as well. Not because it has to run every hour, but as you can put the load on the batch server and not on your session. So just to sum up, what we have seen right now is the possibility to open the security roles, create a new role, and choose some roles that we want to merge into one. And we merge them by running the batch run here, run merging of roles, and then we can easily modify the access as stated in the new role in the security entry point permissions tool here, using main menu or recording very easily. You can also duplicate that role, as we saw before in the DSM main form here, and choose to create a read-only role by pointing on the role here in the add table permissions to role or privilege functionality, and then you end up having a role that a controller can use or anyone else that needs broad access to data but is not allowed to modify anything. I stated in the beginning, a lot of these, well, basically every feature of these is something we have, it's a requirement we have met at a customer. So the customer wants to be able to create this role, but it's not impossible, but time-wise, it's not plausible to create a reduced administrator role manually. And we have put a lot of effort into this reduced this merging of roles. We're not just taking what is stated on the roles and putting that in, because that's not going to work. We actually have an afterburner that runs through the full scope of the role again to make sure that we have the access that we need. So we have put it's an immense amount of hours into making this work sleek. Great. So the last thing I'm going to show you on regards to modifying this role is the table security recording. So let's just delete that recording here so we keep it simple. The table security recording, if you don't have any questions, by the way, to the other one, you can feel free to interrupt me if you have any questions. Great. So this enables you to record information onto which fields and tables typically you want to delimit access to, but it can go both ways. So we can start a recording. As soon as it has started, we don't automatically lock anything as we do in the other recording, which we're going to come back to. But as you saw, we couldn't see that it was going in the background, that recording. It simply ran in the background, collected information on which menu items we have accessed. In this case, we can state what we want to work with. So let's open the accounts receivable and open a customer. You can choose any customer in this case and choose edit. Then we can state we want to delimit access to the credit collections, the three fields found here under the credit. So if we just shortly open this again, we can see we can press F11 on the keyboard to log information on an entire table, or F12 to log on a single field. And when Microsoft created the framework for AX 2012, they also worked a lot, or put a lot of effort into normalizing the database. They didn't get fully there, but they got a lot of redundant data removed. But in that process, they also created, in some cases, an immensely complex table hierarchy. So what we do right now, if we want to delimit access, for instance, to this credit limit, we simply press F12, and then we analyze which table and which field is this field from the front end put in. And then you can simply state, I want to grant viewing rights to this specific field. And then you simply iterate through the remaining number of fields that you want to do this for. You can basically do this with any field, also a checkmark field, as in this case, an yes field, and then click OK. This is also very applicable if you work with a customer that uses master data management. Then you simply iterate through all the fields used in the master data management, or maintained master data management-wise, log all of them, so you have them in the list, stop the recording, and then you have that list available to you here. If you forgot to log a table or field, you can append to the recording by using this here. You can see now we have started the recording again. So we can put extended fields and tables to it. You can also modify the access here. So you can say we only want to, or we don't want to grant any access to this field at all. And then you have done that. Then it's saved. So we haven't modified any role right now, but you can do this by pressing the override permissions on multiple roles button. And then in here, you can simply state which roles are not to have any other access to these fields than the one we have stated in the recording here. And then you can click OK. And then you're done. In this case, you have already now disabled the edit rights for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different standalone security roles. Very easily, very fast. And then you simply export the roles, as seen before, to the environments that they need to go to. In concern to the GDPR Act, have you heard about that? The GDPR Act from EU?
Sorry?
Have you heard about the GDPR Act from EU on regards to handling sensitive data or sensitive data for persons in companies? Have you heard about that?
I never heard about it.
Okay. This is a new piece of legislation that the EU is working on, and what this means is that the companies are now held responsible if they don't keep track or keep the correct track of who has access to personal or sensitive personal information. So what we are going to do, or what we're working on, is to create a list here, a template, which you can simply import into the system, and then you can apply it to the roles that are not allowed to have access to to this sensitive information, thus being compliant with the new rules. If you are not compliant with the rules as a company, you can actually get a very large fine by EU, from EU. I think it's up to 5 or 10% of the revenue within the company that they can actually be fined if they don't comply with this set of rules. It starts April 1st or May 1st as of next year, as I remember. So it's something that that is very exactly, General Data Protection Regulation. That's it.
Okay.
So that's something that's going to be a push from the customers, so that you need to help them being compliant in that sense there. But again, the functionality here shows you that we have put a lot of effort into operationalizing a very technical area. If you were to do this, you would have to, first of all, you would have to know which field and table are we talking about, and then you need to figure out the correct place in the hierarchy to state the security. Otherwise, it simply does not work. And then afterwards, you need to iterate through every single role one by one, applying this these settings. Whereas in this case, you simply click it, press F12, state what kind of access do you want, point at the roles that you want to have this applied on, and then you're done. So you save a lot of time. Another point which is described in the manual on regards to sensitive
Sorry,
data.
can I make a question?
Yeah.
We can only remove permission with this mechanism, or also to add?
You can also add.
Okay, because I didn't see any flag to specify if add or
well, imagine that
remove.
you have a role that has been delimited. You have access to the cost table, but not access to the credit limit. Then you can actually record and state edit. And when you apply edit onto a role,
okay.
then they override whatever access they had prior to that.
Yeah.
So it's actually the exact same way of working, but just with a higher set of rights.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. So if we just 1 minute jump out to the manual again, in this sense here, there, as I stated, is a number of good tips and tricks available in here. A very good one here is define access to private data in the global address book. So if we simply click this, define access here, then if you navigate to the, and this is another way that we've really tried to put this in, so you have the company account, the legal entity here, and then the full path to the menu item that we're talking about here, the functionality that we're talking about here. So if you go here to the worker, for instance, you can see that on the contact information on this worker, there's a check mark here called private. And this means that if you select this private, you will not be able to see this address, not even from a service operation point of view, if you have not been stated here in the global address book parameters. So in the global address book parameters here, you have a note here called private location security. And in here, you can simply state which roles are allowed to see the private data. Again, not many persons are actually aware of this functionality, but if you read the tips and tricks here, you will learn some good tips and tricks. Good. One thing I neglected to say before, by the way, was that you have something here called locked security roles. So we have made it possible here to insert all existing roles as locked roles. And this works together with the merging functionality. So let's, we can see here that we have the product designer. I think we also have the budget manager or something like that. Let me see. The project budget clerk here. So we open the security roles. I'm just going to briefly show you, and then we click merge roles on this, and then it takes 10-15 seconds or something like that, and then it's going to throw an error stating that you are not allowed to use this functionality on this role as it is locked. This is a way of ensuring that you don't modify the access on existing standard roles. Part of our methodology is that we would like to avoid modifying standard at all. So we don't modify standard privileges or duties or roles, we create our own. Great. So let's open the DSM main form. Yeah?
Maybe how do I lock a role? Is it a flag somewhere in the security management or?
It's in here. So you can simply point at it here.
Okay. It's a list.
It's a list in here, yeah. So all the roles that are represented in this list will be locked.
And only the admin can change this list, or? Yeah.
Exactly. You have to be system admin to have access to this list.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Let's go back to the DSM main form here. So in here we have a couple of choices that we have to make. First of all, we need to figure out what do we want to do right now, because we have a number of different functionalities available to us in regards to how to construct a new security role. So in this case, we're going to start with a recording. And we have two types of recordings. The first recording, you have actually already seen that in the security development tool. It's the same recording as this. It runs in the background and simply collects information on all the menu items that you have passed. We also have a DSM recording that's going to prompt you for access level. Let me show you that. So we're going to start the recording. We've started it now. And then we're going to open the online users, for instance. And as soon as we press it, we log that we have a menu item here, sys users online, which is called online users, and the help text is stated here as well. Then you can state, I want to grant viewing rights to that. Then you click OK. If you open the users form, you get the same here, and you can state, I want to state full control, and then you can see that you have the part here. This is like part. These are info boxes on the left-hand side, right-hand side here. And you can say, oh, I don't want them to have other access than viewing. And then you can see it jumps out again, view, then another one, and no access, for instance. And then you can see that here. So if we go back and stop the recording, we are going to have 5 different menu items recorded when it's done here. And you can see that as we stated, we have now stated that we want viewing access to this is users online. You can press the load additional metadata, by the way, to get the labels and so forth in the grid view here. This is also stated in the manual. Just for the sake of it, to save some time, I'm not going to do that now because it takes a minute or two. So what we end up here is a very specific list of the exact menu items that we want to grant access to, and nothing else. And you can see the secureable object access, desired secureable object access here, and you can also see that it has been selected. So it's very clear. So the task at hand right now is to, oh, I just closed it, is to find out which objects in AX grant access to these menu items. I have created a recording beforehand here, which we're going to use, a starting point, and this is actually very simple. This is a recording of menu items, including the access level. And you can actually just see it here. So if you imagine that you have multiple persons carrying out a recording at the same time, and you want the combined list of menu items to form the basis of your new security role, you simply create a new XML file, copy what I have marked in blue here, or selected in blue, and copy that into the new XML file. By that simple maneuver, you can merge different XML files into one and use that as a starting point. In this case, it's very simple. It only consists of 4 different menu items. We have 2 that we want viewing access to, and 2 that we want full control to. So the task at hand right now is to figure out which objects of AX grant access to these menu items. As we have recorded the access level, the access right used in the matching is stated on the line. So this means for it to count as a match on a privilege, for instance, the project activity menu item has to be found as an entry point with viewing rights on the privilege. If it's found with full control or edit or no access or anything like that, it does not count as a match. Thus, instead of having to iterate through 9,500 privileges, you only see the ones that are specifically relevant for your recording. If you have done the other recording, we don't have any information on access level. It just runs in the background and collecting information on regards to which menu items we want to have access to. This is typical if you have a scenario where you state, well, they need to have the highest possible access level to basically every menu item they can access, and if not, we lower the access level to a few, maybe 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, something like that, menu items afterwards. So when we have constructed the security role, we go in on the security role afterwards and see, do they have access to something they aren't allowed to? Very easily as seen before. In this case, we have the secureable object access, so we use this. If we had not had it, we would state that for this to be a match, it has to be at least viewing rights. So view, edit, create, correction, or full control count as a match. You can combine this with a maximum access right and match so that you state that it has to be found within viewing, edit, or create. But as stated a couple of times, we're not going to do that right now. We're going to use the access level information from the grid view here. So let's imagine we find a security role that grants partly access to the menu items. Not full control or not full access to all of the menu items in the list with the desired access level, but partly, for instance, 2 of the 4. If it's 2 of the 4, it means that we have 50% match degree, which you're going to see in a minute. And these 50% match degree means that there are 2 of the 4 menu items that we don't have access to with the desired access level. And then we're going to show you which privileges and duties you can use in order to get that desired access. So instead of having to iterate through the full list of duties and privileges, you only see the ones that are relevant to the recording which the selected role does not grant access to. The last 2 points here are called load license and calculate remaining user license. The first one here is going to load the license on role, duty, privilege, all the way down to menu item level so that you can see what does a given role cost license-wise. The next one here, or last one, is called calculate remaining user license. And this means that we're going to take into account what they have purchased on regards to users, and then we're going to deduct the most recent overview of how they use AX, so how many users they have within the different license types. And then we're going to show you that aside from the role. You're going to see that in a minute. In this case, I'm only going to run through the DSM role, or roles containing DSM as part of the name. And the reason for doing it in this way is that you can delimit the compute time by a fair amount. If you know that you have been working within a purchase area, then you can state, I only want to look through the roles that are that contain purge, for instance, in the name, or vend, or something like that. But now we press OK, and then you see a progress bar that is 3 split. It's actually going to be 4 split at some point, but right now it's matching the roles, DSM roles. You can see which menu item is currently being matched. When it's done doing that, it's going to search non-matched entry points so that we can figure out what to add to a role that is not fully compliant. And last but not least, it's going to load the license on all the different objects that we have in play. Sorry. When it is done loading all of this through, we can access the form behind here and we can start constructing our new security role. So we're going to minimize the recorded entry points now. If we just slightly jump out and come in here. So what we have done right now is we have specified which area we're going to work with operationally. We have carried out a recording. We've taken this recording and we have matched it into the DSM main form. So right now we're going to create a new security role in AX. And as stated, you have a number of different ways to do this. First of all, you have the possibility to choose a role as a starting point and then choose privileges, for instance, that provide access to the menu items from the recording which are not accessible via the selected security role. So in here you can actually see that in a fairly simple list. In this case, we're not going to construct a role based on another role. We're going to construct a fully new role based on privileges, matched privileges. So what you see here is a list, a full list of any privilege in the system in AX that grants either view or full control to the recorded entry points from the list up here. And we're going to use them as foundation for our new role. It's going to be a bit technical now, so this is probably for you, Zago. How do you pronounce your name? Is it Zago? Is it, or how to say it?
Is Nicola the name?
Oh, sorry, but didn't it state Zago in here?
No, never mind.
Oh, Nicola, okay. Sorry about that. My bad.
Okay.
Okay, so when you create a new privilege, you don't only have access to adding menu items together with a access level that form the basis of your entry point here. You also have the permission node, and the permission node is where we store exceptions. So for the user to be able to carry out the functionality behind some of these entry points, they need specific access to some specific tables and specific server methods. And this is important because you can't just construct a new privilege and grant access to entry points and then expect everything to work. At some point, it's going to break down and not work. So what we do here, what we can do here, is simply multi-mark every single one of the privileges that grant access to the traced entry points from the recording. You can see the traced entry points here. And then use them as foundation. So as soon as we select one or more privilege here, you can see that the button Create Role with Privilege is open. And in here, you state a name. You state an AOT name in the top and then a functional name here in the label. Role 1, and of course a description as much as describe as much as possible in this area here. If I just press OK now, we're just going to construct a new security role and assign all of these selected privileges to it. Not modifying any of them, simply assigning the privileges selected here to the role as in play. And then we can see that the privilege license type is an enterprise as highest. So the role is going to be enterprise. If we use this functionality here called remove excess menu items, what we're going to do is to create a merge of all of these privileges. And we merge all of these privileges into one, thus we get all of the exceptions that we were looking up on here. This means that we're probably going to get an excess amount of permissions here, but that doesn't really matter as it's just table access. If you don't have access to the menu item and don't have access to the AOT, you can't access this in any way without the menu item. But the good thing here is that by using all of the privileges here and getting every single exception onto the new privilege, we are 100% certain that the menu items that we have recorded will work because we have every single exception available. So what we do, as stated, is that we merge all of these privileges into one new privilege, and then we remove all of the menu items from the new privilege that has not been recorded. Thus, we end up having a very specific security role that only grants access to the menu items that we have recorded, and we are 99.99999% certain that everything will work because we base it on existing privileges. In this case, we have also recorded the secureable object access, so we can use the access level from recorded entry points. So this means that we end up having a security role with this name, one privilege with the exact list of entry points that or menu items that we have recorded, and in this case also with the exact wished secureable object access. So the exact wished or desired access to the menu items. If we have a customer that is not best practice compliant, again this is a bit technical explanation, then you have a possibility to add entry points outside privileges to new privilege. A bit cryptic explanation here, but what this means is that if we have recorded an entry point, a menu item up here, that is not found in an existing privilege, then we're going to add that recorded entry point to the new privilege that we've just created with the access level as stated from the recording. So this is a way to get compliant within the security area. If you have created a menu item and not put it into a privilege, you're not best practice compliant. But you can get compliant by this functionality here. And then we have the same functionality as we have gone through before in regards to creating a project name or a project, an IoT project. And we can simply state include all sub-elements from specified layer and above. So in this case, we're going to end up with a role that is going to be functional instead of enterprise, because the menu item that is traced here and found in the related privilege is costing task user license or functional. So instead of being enterprise, if we just added all of these privileges to the role and did not modify it in any way, we construct a new privilege that only grants access to the exact list that we've recorded, and it ends up being cheaper. Can you follow the process?
Yes.
Perfect. And again, you don't have to leave the front end here in any way to not only construct the security role, but also to create the project and make it available for export. If you were to create this security role manually, you would have to use a lot of time figuring out all of the exceptions and all of that manually. So in here, you simply state this information and press OK, and then you're done. Then you can test it or move it. As we have matched roles, security roles, and matched privileges, we also have matched duties. And this is applicable or useful to create a new role with duties, but it's also useful if you want to create segregation of duties. So you can see the traced entry point name here in this column. And if I want to delimit or to create an SOD rule, are you familiar with the segregation of duty?
No.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I don't know what is it.
Okay. It's a standard framework that Microsoft has created called segregation of duties, in which it is possible to state some rules where you state a person is not allowed to have this duty and this duty at the same time. So if you try to assign a security role that has to a person that has this duty within, and the person also has access already to this duty, you will get an error. So it's actually a really simple stating here or functionality. You can simply create a new rule, and then you select a duty and another duty and a severity level, and then you're done. The task at hand here is to find the right duty to do this in, because you have 1,600 to choose between. So what we have done in DSM is to create a button here called Create SOD. And that actually opens the form that you just saw before. And then it puts in the duties that you have selected here. Remember again, you're not looking at 1,600 duties here. You're looking at the duties that are relevant to the menu items that you have recorded. And then you can basically give it a name, reply it, give it a severity level, medium, and then you're done. So imagine that you want to delimit a person from the capability of creating a bank account and also transferring funds, transferring money to that bank account. And let's just imagine that it is two different menu items. Then you start a recording in here. No, you open the form where the two buttons are available, and then afterwards you start a recording, and then you reopen the form, and then you click on the two buttons that you want to segregate. And then you have that as a list, and then you carry out a match. And after the match is done, you have the list of duties that grant access to the specific menu items. And you can see both the license type as well as the access level here to the menu item. And then you simply click that button, Create SOD, when you have selected the two duties, and then you're done. This is data, by the way. This is not AOT. This is fully data. Any questions?
What's the sense of severity in the segregation of duty?
If you set, as I remember, if you set severity high, you are not allowed to assign that duty to the same person. If you set it medium, you're warned. And if it's low, then it's just a retroactive way of looking into it. So you can see it in the list.
Okay.
That it's violated. That's how I remember it. I'm not 100% certain that that is how it is, but I'm quite certain that is how it is.
Okay, thank you.
Just to sum up what we've done, we've carried out a recording. By the way, you can also record on an enterprise portal site, but that's slightly more complicated, well, to say the least. I have a specific data set that you can import into the tool called Windows Performance Monitor. And you do this on the Internet Information Server, so the server that runs your IIS service. And then you start the enterprise portal after you have imported this data set into the Windows Performance Monitor and started the recording in there. And then you carry out your process in the EP, into the enterprise portal. And afterwards, you can go to the Windows Performance Monitor and save the recording as a trace file. And then you can load that trace file into DSM here. And afterwards, you can't really differ whether or not it's been recorded in AX or in the EP. So you can record on the EP as well. Typically, it's not necessary if you do it based on the matching and just add privileges to a recording, because the EP entry points are located there as well. So let's just open that one here. The next point I'm going to show you, no, we were in the midst of summing up, sorry. So we have carried out a recording, we have loaded it into the system here, and we've matched it. Then we've created, or we've shown how to create a role based on another role, and we've created a role based on existing privileges, either adding privileges to a role or merging the selected privileges into one new privilege and only granting access to what has been recorded. We also have the possibility here to find, for instance, all privileges that have license type task user. When I do this, it's going to iterate through the 9,500 privileges in the system to find all the ones that end up costing task or being a task license. When it's done iterating through that, you have a list here in the privileges based on license type that grants you access to anything within this license. So you can simply multi-mark every one of them and create a role, as we saw before, with this right. And then what this enables you to do is to, if you have a customer that needs to be compliant license-wise, you can very fast create a security role here that you know is not going to cost, for instance, enterprise license, but only being on a functional level. and then get them compliant, and then create the correct security roles afterwards if they are in dire need of being compliant. The last way that you have of constructing a security role in this environment here, or in this functionality here, is if you press that locate privileges without role, then we're going to find all of the privileges that do not have a link which hasn't been assigned to a role. So it's just a standalone privilege. So we've created a sort of quick and dirty here where you can either click some of them or click every one of them and then click the create role with unallocated privileges from privileges without role tab page. And it works in the exact same way as you saw before. The reason for doing this is that if you're talking or thinking about how security works in 2012, it works in a way that if you create a new form, new screen in AX that has a menu item to it, and you don't create, and you put this menu item into a privilege, thus you're best practice compliant, but you don't put this privilege onto a security role. The only person in the organization that is able to use this new menu item then is the sysadmin, the system administrators. Because AX works in a way where it delimits access to all of the menu items which has not been accounted for security-wise, as opposed to 2009 and prior to that AX versions, where everyone would just have access to it. So in this case, as I stated, it's a quick and dirty where you can simply see the list of privileges that you haven't really accounted for, and then you can create a role with these privileges, thus enable the use of the menu items. And these functionalities that I've shown you actually form the full basis of the way we work with creating security in AX 2012. So as soon as you get them on hand, it's actually fairly, I won't call it simple because security is never simple, but it's much easier than standard. We have a couple of other development tools available to us here. We have a functionality here called Update System Documentation. So we have seen a number of examples where a vendor or a supplier, where you, for instance, implement a new tool, and this new tool, a new model, contains some roles. And when these roles are implemented into AX is very keen on documenting the name of this into the system documentation tables. So the tables, the static tables that you find in the AOT all the way in the bottom here. And these tables contain a number of different information. For instance, the security role. So if we need to use the table browser. So if this is done wrongly, you will see that this is not a link to a label file. This is static text, so it's never going to be updated again. So when we import this and we install these new roles, AX wants to document and to update these security system documentation tables before it can access the label. Thus, you end up having a security role named at SEC 235, which is then the reference to the label file and the exact label in the label file. So what we do simply is to iterate through all of the security-related system documentation tables and figure out if we have references to label files in them at any point. And if we do, we look up into the label file and put the correct content, the correct name of the role back into the table automatically. So you don't have to look upon names that are at SEC, so forth.
But this operation is manual. I mean, if I have an ISV which want to update this documentation, I don't have an IPA which I can call programmatically. It's just a manual operation.
Yes, if you want to update them, yes.
Ah, okay.
That is a manual operation. Because it's static text.
Okay.
Super. The last thing I'm going to talk about in here is this functionality, and that's called create license usage minor batch job. And this batch job is the batch job, the standard batch job that Microsoft has created that forms the basis of the named user license count. So how many users have which different license types in the system. And there's actually no way of starting this job from the front end. You have to create a small job in the AOT to start this batch job. But we have just created a simple button here that creates the job in the batch overview, so that you again can avoid the AOT. So the last two things we're going to look upon before break are functionalities on regards to retroactively digging into a role, figuring out why does it cost what it costs, as well as a user management tool where you have the possibility to drill into a form and see which privileged duties and roles grant access to it. We're going to start with the role and license type explorer. And if you remember back to what I said in the beginning, this is actually an example from a real-life customer where a consultant had added a duty to a standard role, not following our methodology, by the way. Sorry. So we have the retail store manager here, and we can see that overall it's an enterprise license. As soon as we select it up here, we can see that we expand and populate the information on what is found within this role in the lower part of the form. We have the duties and the privileges within the duties and entry points within the privileges here. If we have privileges found directly onto, on the role, there's going to be no duty stated here, and then you can find the corresponding privileges in this area here, which are found directly onto the role. But what we're showing you here is which elements make this expensive. So we colorize the highest or most expensive license type red. So if the most expensive license type is functional, that's going to be red. Whereas it is, in this case, is the enterprise that is most expensive, and then you can click that. As soon as you click that, you can see which privileges are located within this duty. And again, here you can see that the reason for this role being expensive is that we have tax details maintain Indian functionality found on here, and they didn't use this functionality. So we basically went into the duty, copied or duplicated the duty, modified the content of the duplicated duty by removing the tax details maintain India, and got the role back to being a task user. Fairly easily understandable, fairly easily done. But this is just our overview of it. So you actually have every single piece of data from the overview available here. And we're not constructing that every time we open the form. You have to rebuild the data if you want an updated view of it. Oh, I'm really sorry. It was such a long night, so sorry about that. So the role name is stated here, and the roles link to any duty assigned to the role, any privilege found in any of the duties assigned to the role, and any entry points found in any privileges found in any duties found on the role. And we even link the license type, the entry point access, and the entry point label, so you can see what button are we actually talking about. And what we see a lot is that we simply multi-mark every single piece of every single transaction in this table here and click export to Excel. And then we take that piece of information and we add, this is part of the audit that we're going to go through next time, and then we add this information in another tab in Excel. This basically shows you any role assigned to any user within any legal entity at any point in time after you started logging. And by having this information here, it actually enables you to start drilling into license costs. So this enables you to see why is it expensive to use AX in Germany as compared to Italy, for instance. Then you can actually see which entry points have been assigned within the German legal entity that hasn't been assigned in the Italian entity. And then you can start digging into that and see if you can save anything. Or why was it expensive to use AX in April versus February? Did we do something wrong there? So you can really start digging into your license usage of AX and even usage of AX here. Can you see the use of this in connection to this license drilling?
Yeah.
Great. So the last thing I'm going to show you before break is found in any form in AX. So imagine that you have a user that asks asks to get access to a specific button, for instance, the attachments button here. Then you can right-click in any form and click Personalize. And within any form, as I said in AX, you can navigate to any button that has a menu item behind. In this case, we want to grant access to the attachments button. So we navigate to this is just a play button, so just look away from that. We navigate to the tab users, the users tab. We navigate to the button group attachments as found here, and then we have the button attachments found in there. In here, you can right-click and choose Security Tree. It's a very simple form that opens as soon as you do that. And in here, you can right-click and choose Roles. So in here, we can see that the DSM Reduced Administrator grants access to the menu item as well as the retail store IT and the system user. But you can also right-click and see which duties actually grant access. And as you can see here, all of the duties that grant access to the DocuView menu item granted with full control. You can see that by the button here, also by the icon here. But you can even drill further. So you can state, I want to see which other menu items are found within this specific privilege. And then you can actually drill in and out and see which roles grant access to this, who has been assigned this specific role, which roles does this specific person have in addition, and within which legal entity. So you can really use this as a drilling tool in your everyday work with security. You can also select the menu item here, for instance, and choose View Related Security Roles. By doing that, we open a simple grid view where you can see the access level. As well.
Sorry.
Yeah.
But all this information is in the database, or?
Yes, it is.
Where do you find all? Okay. So there is some batch to initialize information.
No, this is actually, this information here is actually part of the standard framework. It's just very hard to access it.
Okay.
And then cross-references, yeah. But this is just a view of some of the functionalities that are, or sorry, the data that is already there. We simply link it in a useful way.
Okay.
Great. So this was if you had a button, for instance, on a form. You could navigate to the action pane through the action pane and find the button related. You can only do this if there is a menu item. We can't do it with a form control or an empty button like that. On the information page, or yeah, tab page here, you have that same functionality, but that applies to the main form that you have opened here. So that the form that you have right-clicked in is found on the information tab. And in here you have the same possibility to right-click and choose roles. In this case, it's only the security administrator that can access this user's form here. So that was if you needed to figure out who or how to grant access to a specific functionality to a button. And remember, this was accessible through any form in any part of AX. If you have a situation where you have a user that is used to being admin, but you don't want that person to be admin, but they are used to going into the table browser, for instance, to find information, then you have the possibility to add this access to them. So add access to table browser, even though you are not system admin. If we briefly jump out to the settings here, and we go to the top, browser, access to table browser. Then we have created two different privileges. One privilege that grants viewing rights, as stated here, to the related table in a table browser view, or another privilege that grants the same rights in the table browser as the user currently have from the front end. And this is a method of absolutely last resort, because you don't want users roaming around in the table browser where it's possible to delete certain records. So if you grant access, try to only grant access with the viewing rights. But it can be necessary at some point to clean up and do it in this way here. So what we typically do is we create a role that only grants access to this specific privilege or this specific privilege. So we have two roles to cover this. And if you have been assigned one of these roles, you will have a functionality here called table browser. So from any field, in any grid, in any part of AX, you can choose table browser. And then it actually opens the table browser behind this specific field. So again, you don't have to find the table in the hierarchy or drill down through the form design or anything like that. You can simply right-click any field and choose, not personalize, but table browser. And then it opens the corresponding table. This is useful if you have heavy users, not heavy users, but users who are used to looking into complicated technical stuff. Then you can assign that right to them if they need it.
Sorry, but this functionality is of your framework or is it standard?
That's from our framework.
Ah, okay. It's very cool.
Yeah. So you can't actually have access to the table browser if you're not system admin in standard.
Yeah, okay. So only you need an enterprise license to to have
Yes,
this functionality.
to use it
Okay.
standard-wise, not to use ours. Ours is a task, as I remember.
Okay.
So if I remember, I've even created that role. Let me check. Oh, I need to here. System admin, security roles. Let me just check. I think I created it. Let me just create it then. Table, browser, access, view. And then we can click add. We just do this manually. And then we choose duty and privileges. And then we choose browser. So here you have the DSM functionalities or table browser with view access, and then you simply click like that, and then you have that possibility now if you assign this to a specific person.
Okay.
Oh yeah, I had created it. I can see that here. Now there are two roles that have this access. Let me just overlooked it probably.
So the view only functionality is also for a task license or?
Yes, as far as I remember, yeah.
Okay. Good.
Yep. Any questions or comments before we take a break? I think we are a bit ahead of schedule. Let me just check. Yeah, we're 15 minutes ahead, so we can take a half-hour break.
I have no question.
Yeah. Did you have a? Oh, did you say you had no question? Sorry.
I don't have. I don't have.
Sorry, I misheard you. Perfect. But great. Then let's take a half-hour break, and then you're going to have a hands-on in our demo environment. And after the session, I can provide you with a copy of that exact demo environment as VHD files. They are around 150 gigabytes, so you need some space. But otherwise, I can send you the model and some license keys together with the installation that you can install in your own environments. That's up to you what you want. Or I can do both.
Okay. Maybe it's better the demo environment, the first option.
Yeah.
Or
that's fine. I can make that happen just after this demo here. This session today.
Okay. Maybe I was thinking that it could be interesting to try to install it. So.
I will send you the
I don't know in which I don't have an environment where to install it, so maybe okay. No, it's better the first option.
But then, if you want to do it in that way, then you can download an image from Microsoft and then install in that yourself.
Okay.
So you get hands-on in that way. I would recommend doing it in that way then, because then you know how to install it and see how it works and so forth. But we can talk about that after the session, how you want to progress in that sense.
Okay. So let's use your environment for now. And
yeah. Perfect.
Thank you.
Let's do that. Okay. Talk to you in 30 minutes then, exactly from now.
Okay. Thank you.
Perfect. Hi guys, are you back?
Hi.
Perfect.
I'm back. Now I think also the others are returning.
Perfect. So I'm just going to send you a link in a chat message.
Okay.
I just thought the other partners that I have shown this to, they had access to this, but we haven't checked this, that you have access, so I certainly hope that you have access to this IP. Otherwise we have to do this hands-on later, but let's check it, whether or not you have access. This is the VHD that partners can that we can supply, that has DSM pre-installed and all of that. You don't have access?
I'm connecting. Okay. I cannot to connect to the remote computer.
Okay, then someone did.
They...
It is running. I'm on it here. So it is running.
Okay.
What we can do then, just to make sure that we have a session now, is to maybe have you, Nicola, take over my screen then, and then you can carry out some a bit of hands-on, and then afterwards, when you have carried out this hands-on, we will make sure that you, as fast as humanly possible, get the environment in your own stack, so to speak.
Okay.
I don't know why I didn't think about that, because the other partners, they just had access to this. So they probably already been granted insight into, some part of our environment. But would that work? Would that be okay with you, that you take over the screen, my screen, a bit, and then do it, or do you just want to postpone it until you have it in your own premise, and then we can have a session of an hour where I guide you, and then we stop here for today. We can have that before next Friday, or we can start with that on next Friday if you want. That's up to you. I'm really sorry I didn't check this before, but it hasn't been an issue before.
Just a moment that I ask also to the other what's the better option.
Yeah.
Okay. In this session, we'll just look at you in your screen, and then we'll try by ourselves.
When it's installed.
To have. Sorry?
When it's installed in yourself, or what do you mean? Sorry, just continue. Sorry for the interruption.
No, I was asking to download the environment.
Yeah.
Is from what's the address from?
We have a to share this. We have a Dropbox that we use, where I have a link, So you can download it from there.
Okay.
Because it's quite large. It's around, as I said, around 150, 160 gigabytes. It's two files. Otherwise, there's the possibility that you can download an R3 demo environment from Microsoft. I don't know where my TSA downloads it from, but I can certainly figure that out. And then I can send you the model that's around 1 megabyte. And then the installation guide, if you want to be able to install it yourself in your own environment. So
I think that for the next session, maybe we try to have our own environment available. For this section, we just see in the screen what you do.
Okay, super.
Okay.
So it's actually a very simple task that I wanted you to go through, a fairly simple task that I wanted you to go through hands-on now, but then I'm just going to show you, and then we record it, and then you can do it afterwards fairly easily. So I am still recording, by the way. I hope I am. I think I started it again. Yeah, it has been started. So what we're going to do is that we're going to start one recording, and we're going to use two different methods of recording. The standard recording and the DSM recording. In this case, we might only choose one, but let's talk about that. And then we're going to open the users form and press the profiles button. And then we're going back to, as it's stated here, to DSM main form and stop the recording. And then we will carry out a match through the match roles button, where we are only going to match the star SEC star security roles named with at least SEC in the name here, but I'm going to show you. And then we're going to modify this in three different ways of methods, in three different methods afterwards. So let's open the DSM main form here. Let me just close these forms. And AOT. So we open the DSM main form here. And then we click on the start recording. And we can just use the standard recording in this case here. And now it's been started. So we open the users form and click on the profiles button. So this button here has its own menu item, so this has also been locked. So let us go back and stop the recording. As soon as it's been stopped, we end up having a list of the profiles button, as you can see here, and all of the buttons, the menu items from the users form. All of these named part, these are info boxes on the left-hand side in the users form. So these ones here have their own menu item assigned. So let's just open this again here. If we press load an additional metadata, you will see that this segment here, this grid view, is going to expand it with extended information. One of the pieces of information that's going to be assigned there is the name of the button. So in this case, SUS user info page is the technical name, that's the AOT name of it, and then we're going to put in the name from the front end. You can see it here, users. So here you have user profiles and all of that. So that makes it a bit easier to understand. So what we want to do now is to match this not to DSM but to SEC, because we want to have all of the roles matched that is named in security in any way. Then we press OK. And in this case, we haven't got the access level recorded because it just ran in the background. So we're going to use the minimum access right and match approach. Otherwise, we simply leave it as it was and press OK. So right now it's matching all of the security roles or all of the roles that contain SEC together in the name, and figuring out what actually matches these 5 menu items. So just to sum up what we're about to do now, we have just recorded a working process in AX, and we want to create a role to support that working process. So I've just minimized the recorded entry points here and opened the matched privileges. So in this case, we see that we have a number of different entry points, privileges that grant access to these entry points. We can also see that unless how we look at it, this is going to be an enterprise, because you can see here that the menu item, the cost of the profiles menu item is an enterprise in full control here. And the only way you can access it is with full control. So we can't really do anything there on regard to license. But if we want to construct a security role, we can simply click through the privileges that we want, and then we can click Find Matched Entry Points, and then it colorizes the remaining privileges that also grant access to this menu item that we've just selected green. And then we can do this all the way down. I can see that these are the remaining 4, so we don't need to do this. So whenever everything is green or blue, you are done when you just select. So in this case, we create the role. We call it reply it role. I can't remember if we created it, we didn't, but I'm just going to do it here. Reply it role 2. And we do nothing more than create an AOT project, reply it role 2. And then we choose include all sub-elements from specified layer and above. So what we're going to end up with now is a security role with this name, something in the description here, where we've added 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 existing privileges to this role, because we haven't selected these remove excess menu items, so we're not going to do a merge. And then we're going to create an AOT project with this name, and we're going to add elements into this project that are found in the CUP USR or USP layer. So that's what it's doing right now. And this process can take anywhere between a few seconds and some minutes, depending on how much machine power you have available and how many elements you have added. As soon as it's done, you can close this area here. We state in the info log that we are done, so that there can be no doubt that we are actually done. You can close that as well as the message window. And in here you can see that the only thing that's present in the role is, in the project is the role that we have just created. So this is a fully newly designed role that we have put in here. And the only thing that's left here is to export, and then you can do the export. So if
sorry, can I make a question?
Yeah.
During the recording, not only the menu item of the form have been selected, but also the menu item of the parts.
Yeah.
And what about the menu items in the top menu of the form?
In the...
Sorry?
Could you say it again? I didn't hear it.
Are they... in the form there are a lot of menu items in the top bar.
Yeah.
Will they all be included with simply including the menu item of the form?
simply including these menu items that are loaded by AX kernel into the form. The rest up here, you have to press the ones that you want to have access to. And this is on purpose, because what our intent is to delimit as many as possible buttons from the users.
So they are not selected by the recording?
Only if you press them. What I did in the recording was that I opened this form here and then I pressed only the profiles.
Okay, so only that will be included. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, thanks.
So let's go back again and let's just keep this simple as we did before. So we simply include everything here. Just for the sake of the performance here, we leave out this reduced administrator because that's fairly large. So we, you can, by the way, you can see here that I could have actually just unchecked these because it's the same privilege that grants access to these menu items, but nevertheless, then we click the same button up here, and then we click reply it role 3, reply IT role 3, description, and then we state that we want to remove excess menu items. Again, we create a project, reply it role 3, and we state that we only want this to be part of it. This can probably take some time, but I'm going to press it anyway. By the way, one of our developers has just been working in here, so I certainly hope that it's working. But we might experience an info. No, it's dated, so it's okay. So what we're seeing here is a new role again called replied test role or replied role 3. And in here we see that we only have access to the entry points that we have selected in a fully new privilege, but we have the permissions from the privileges that were available from the privileges that we selected. Thus, we are certain that we can carry out the information, or sorry, the functionality that is found here within this new security role. So let's go back again here and let's just do the update system documentation. So we have that correct name there. And then we open the security entry point permissions. What did we call it? Reply test role 3. So now it's going to load the permissions from this role into the main menu. And as it is extremely limited, you will see that a lot of these will be read, except from some system administration here in the users form, which was the one we chose, and the users profile, which we also chose. We also have some access here on the retail essentials, because this is the same page as we have it here. And this is something that can be a bit confusing in AX, that Microsoft uses the same entry points around AX, but that's just how it is. If you want to test this, you can actually do this fairly easily. If you don't have domain groups created in your system, we're going to come back to these next time. The difference between a domain, Active Directory user and Active Directory group. I think I might have surpassed it here, but let me just check. Yeah. So what you can actually see here, just don't mind all of the rest here. That's another reason. But what you can see here in the system administration menu is how it would look like for the user. So if we open this, again, you have to look away from this, because from some of it, because I have created these groups in this system, so we can't really trust this. So we have to open it as a test user and test it to see how it really works. But you can still see here that it is fairly limited. And we have access to the profiles here as we wanted. So if you have not created up here Active Directory groups in your users overview, you can use the testing space here. I have removed an error that is stated if you press it and you've created it where it states that that it will not work if you if you've created these groups. So you will have that error if you install it at a customer. So again, fairly simple. If you want to extend access, so let's say you
Sorry, we don't heard any audio. Can you hear me? We can't hear anything. Ah, okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now it's okay.
Perfect. So let's imagine that we want to extend the access from this specific on this specific role. Then it's actually fairly easy if we simply do it from the front end again here. We can either right-click it here and then we can choose Reference Privilege. Then it shows you all of the privileges that grant access to user relations. And then I can simply choose View User Relations and Add to Role. And then, okay, there are some, I needed to reopen this to actually do it. But then we can, this is the Microsoft tool, by the way. Then we can simply choose a privilege to do it in this way. But we could also just have right-clicked here. I think I'm just going to reopen the form so we don't get that error message again. Security is here. Reply. So if you want to grant access to another feature in here, we can simply open a user relation or user groups. Let's take that one here. Then it opens in here, and then you can set entry point permissions as I showed you before. So if you state that I want them to have viewing rights to this, for instance, desired access level is now view, then you can also do it in this way. Then we can right click and choose apply, and then it has been added. The main thing that you need to be aware of here is that you don't get exceptions in here. So this is not really the way forward. If you do it in this way, you want to extend access, I'm just showing this because this is a possibility, then you should carry out a recording, match it into the DSM main form here, which would then show you which privileges you can add in here as you choose a security role. And then when you have done that, let me just show you. Okay, because it's 100% match degree. Then you can add a privilege here, and then in here you have that same capability as to remove excess menu items, but we only remove excess menu items from privileges that we have not already merged, so that we make sure that we can extend access of an existing merged security role. It's a bit technical now, but but that's how the process is. It's fairly simple to do. Do you have any questions in regards to this? It does not take that long when I do it.
Yes.
So I've actually set a lot of time off so everyone could be able to do this.
Can you just repeat how to see how to test the menu which will be seen by the user?
Yeah. So if we are using in the users form here, if we have domain users as we do here, oh sorry, domain groups as we do here, then we cannot use the test workspace from this security entry point permissions. So in that case, I would assign it to assign the new role to a person. Let's take Jimmy in this case. We can remove. Yes. And then assign reply role 3. So in this case, I would simply have a test. You cannot use your own role, so your own user as a test user, because in the old versions of AX, you could just open a new instance, a new session with modify your user settings, and then open a new session with that user and then test it. But you can't do that with AX in 2012, because whenever you assign or revoke access to a security role, it goes through, even on online users. So their current open sessions will be affected by this. So then you need to have a test user that you then open an AX with. So let's
okay, so there are a test user. I cannot test it with my own admin user.
No, you have to have a test user. But if you don't have the, did we close it? If you don't have the, we closed it. No, it's here. Groups here stated. So if you don't use those, if you don't assign security to groups, then you can use this one here, open the security test workspace. And then you state a role that you want to test, and then open it with the security test workspace.
Okay, and I just see the menu. I cannot test the whole functionality of, I cannot test if I can open the form, I can use that functionality of the form, and so on.
You
just to see the menu.
It emulates that
everything.
So you can test everything if you don't use groups. But if you use groups, then Microsoft hasn't seen it fit to build that into that functionality.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? One thing I neglected to say here is that you can actually see when you modify access in here, you can see previous access level was no access, but now we have view. You can also at any point in time see what the system user role has access to from here. And it's also bold, the writing here, the elements that have been modified. So it's fairly easy to see what's been modified. User groups was not accessible before, but is now accessible with viewing rights as stated. So if I open it here, and bear in mind that this is not that fully correct because I have the groups stated, then you can see that I have user groups available now with viewing rights. So I cannot create or modify it in any way. Any other questions right now?
No.
then I think that we should work on getting you able to access an environment. So I will reach out to my TSA, make sure that he has updated the AX here in to the newest version, and then I will reach out to you when he has done that. If he already has done it, that's great. Otherwise, I will just send you the download links from within the Dropbox so that you can download the VHD files here, the images. Okay.
Okay.
Perfect. Well, then we are a bit ahead of time. But if you have any questions, just reach out to me. I will send you, Nicola, all the documents. It's fairly large. Can you receive an email of around 30 megabytes? Or
how many? Sorry.
30.
I don't know.
I'll test it. Otherwise, I'll just upload it to the Dropbox and give you.
Maybe it's better. I don't know which limit I have in the email.
Okay. I'll test it, and if it doesn't go through, I will simply upload it to Dropbox.
Okay, thank you.
Perfect.
Do you have already our email?
Yeah, I have your mail. That was in the invitation here.
Yeah, yes, you do.
So I have it. Yeah. Great. Thanks for attending, and we'll talk as soon as possible, Nicola, so that we can have your own environment, which you can open and access on next Friday's. I think it's next Friday that we have the next session, isn't it?
Yes, it is next Friday.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Perfect.
Just in case, if we have a problem with the creation of the environment, can I write you an email?
Yes,
okay.
you can. Then I will, if I can't answer it, I will put you through to a person who can.
Okay. So, thank you.
Perfect. Thanks for attending, and have a good weekend when you get there.
You too. See you.
See you. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.